Hi, welcome to the Inspiration of Painting. Well, in this lesson we're going to do something that we've had a lot of requests for, and that's a hummingbird. So we're going to call this painting Ruby because we're going to paint a ruby-throated hummingbird. I'm going to use a small photograph here for detail and for reference, but first of all we need to get our background blocked in, and that's really one of the most unique things in this painting is you're going to get a lot of experience in building the background. Then we'll focus in on how to detail out the bird. Well, first of all, let's go down to our palette. And as you can see on the palette, I've already poured out some gesso, which is very important. We're going to use some gesso today to blend the background because we want it to be very soft. And now we're going to take our sky brush and take some water, and you're going to wet the canvas. Now, there are several ways to wet the canvas. Of course, you can spray it with a mister bottle like this if you want, or you can just dip this in the water and wet it. Doesn't really matter. Either way is fine. Just get it wet, not dripping wet, just wet. Okay? Distribute the water evenly across the canvas. Then come down immediately. Now we have to work quickly on this. Start laying in the gesso because we're going to build some light and dark areas. As you'll know in the photograph here, you can see light areas and dark areas. That's what adds the real interest to the background and to the whole painting is the light and dark areas. So you take gesso and we gesso the whole canvas and get a pretty good amount on there. As we always test it, you know, we run our finger across and see if there's plenty of it on your finger. And being a fairly large canvas, we have to work with big X's to cover it and make sure that it's blended. Okay, now after you've got all the gesso on here and you've got a nice thick coating of it, make sure that it's pretty well blended across. Then we start applying color. Now what I like about this, you can just start throwing the color on. For instance, you can take the light blue violet, just put it on a little here, a little purple here, a little green and red, a little brown and blue. I mean, this is something that one of your little kids can do probably, but this is the way it starts. Just start throwing it on and having a good time. Don't worry about it. Blue, green, purple, brown, just a variety of all of those colors. Don't throw too much yellow in with it because that'll turn it kind of muddy. But use plenty of blues and purples and browns, some greens maybe. And just throw it around like this. Don't worry about blending it just yet. And another important thing is we want some of the corners darker and some of the middle part lighter, okay? So that's real important. Now this Hooker's green is a wonderful color, but be sure you mix plenty of purple with it so that it's not so vivid. See, like right here I put the Hooker's green, but I added some purple to it to kind of gray it down some. We want the background to be soft and muted, not real intense. Like this bright purple I just put on here. That's just a little too intense, but as we blend it'll work itself out. Okay, now it's very important that you go through and kind of halfway blend it together. Just get any hard spots of color. Just go through quickly, loosely. Now don't piddle with it. Now, that's about the biggest mess you've probably ever seen, but it's the funnest mess you've ever created because it's going to turn into something beautiful here. Now we're going to take a little green and purple, maybe a little brown. We're going to start down here in the corner because I want this corner to be a little bit darker. Okay. Now, as soon as you've got that, take your mist bottle and mist it lightly like this, all over, very lightly. Then rinse your brush out. Squeegee the excess water out. Start up in the left-hand corner and using big crisscrosses, feather. Begin feathering the paint, blending it together. This is how you get those real subtle soft backgrounds. I've had a lot of people come up to me at art shows and different places and think that I've used an airbrush to get this background. Well, you don't use an airbrush. This is how you do it. Great big, very soft strokes. This creates a beautiful soft blend. It looks like you used an airbrush. Not that that's the effect you're trying to achieve. It's just that when you're doing birds and animals, these soft muddled backgrounds, very soft color, are very important to help show off the details of the bird. Okay, like so. Now you want all these colors to be mixed in, so don't be afraid. Just keep blending like this, very quick, very loose, very free. Now most of you will get in trouble on this blending because without experience, your blending technique is usually a little on the rough side, so it's kind of hard to really feel comfortable. So you'll end up with your canvas drying up on you before you get a chance to blend it, and then you get in trouble. So if that happens, the best thing to do is just to let it dry completely and just start over until you've learned how to blend it without having it dry up on you. Now I don't know exactly how long it's taking us to do this, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, but notice I'm just barely skimming the surface. It almost looks like I'm not touching it, but what I'm doing is cleaning up any brush strokes that might be extremely visible. Now brush strokes in their uniformity in terms of overlapping each other and creating motion is okay. But what you don't want is a mark like that that's an obvious stroke that looks like it's not blended. That's what you want to get out. And there may be 2 or 3 in there. Fortunately for us, if we get enough weeds and flowers and things down here, you'll be able to cover up a good bit of this background. So that's something you need to think about. All right? Now, you've got a nice soft muddled background here, and while it's drying, we're going to go ahead and lay in some leaves and some things down in the foreground here that will create the, you might say, the surroundings for this hummingbird. One of the things that I like to do is take the same brush that I was using. Let's go down to our palette now, and I will take a little bit of white, a little touch of yellow, and a little touch of green. And I'll get this light yellow green here. And I will use the chisel edge of the brush. Now if you've seen some of our other programs or whatever, you'll notice I do that a lot. We use the edge of the brush for a lot of things like weeds. You can create a nice flow to it. The thing I like about this is if you use this to build some of your weeds and things, it's a lot more flexible. See how you build those soft weeds? Now these are just sort of background weeds. They'll kind of fade into the distance, but that's what you want them to do. Reload. Now you don't want them all doing the same thing. Sometimes they'll kind of bend like this. This is how you create that sort of a fluffy look. You know how some of them will bend. And there's a variety of weeds and brush that you can put in these kind of things. Once you learn how to manipulate this brush, you can do anything. It's absolutely amazing. Okay. Now we will put some dark ones in here in a minute. Now one of the things that's kind of neat is you kind of swish the brush. That creates a soft edge to each weed, and you can even use the chisel corner of the brush to put little leaf-like attachments, seed pods. Just touch it like that. You can create a little seed pod. The sky is absolutely the limit of what you can do with this little brush, or this big brush. Okay. Now we've got some of the darker weeds coming, the lighter weeds. Now let's put some of the darker ones in. So you need to rinse your brush now. The traditional way of putting the weeds in, of course, is getting a small brush and just hand paint each one individually, but usually they're so uniform they don't look really like they're in place. Then there are a variety of other flat brushes, some good watercolor brushes that hold a flat edge are good for this too. Now let's take our Hooker's green and a little purple, work it into your brush again down here on your palette so that it's nice and flat. So then you come down here and you're going to do some of the identical things, just a little darker color. But we do want a variety of values in here. In fact, in the very corner, if you want to get real courageous, you could take your brush and just kind of dry brush up some dark paint here to kind of darken the corner, and out of that corner you'll go ahead and pull all of the weeds. So it looks like the darkness really is just nothing more than a whole conglomeration of weeds down in the corner. This is really a unique painting. Now on the very edge over here there are going to be weeds that are coming up. We don't know exactly how this is built. Maybe there's a little hill over here. We don't see it. But go ahead and build the colors. Like so. Okay. Now just keep building until you're confident that you have enough weeds and brush to kind of balance out the painting, because when we put the hummingbird in, because she or he is so dominant with the brighter colors, it will have a tendency to overpower the rest of the painting. Okay, so now we've got these in here. Now you can always come in and still add light colored weeds. For instance, you can come down here and take some yellow and a little white if you want to, and go ahead and add a few more other colors like this, some stiffer, more thicker, deeper weeds with a little more impact, a little more color. But let's don't take it too far just yet. We can always add these things later. These become a little more fuzzy, a little softer. Okay. Now, after you've put some of the weeds in there and you've got some of the highlights, let's stop for the moment and lay this brush down. And this should be dry enough by now that you can go ahead and take a piece of charcoal and you can sketch in the hummingbird. Now, this is going to be a little bit bigger than life size, but it will work better for you seeing it on the video because you can see the details better. But hummingbirds are extremely small, much smaller than your hand. And but anyway, there's a long beak, of course, then the head that comes up, the eye. Let's just get a very rough, quick, loose sketch, but very accurate sketch. Okay. Now, we'll put the wing. The wing starts here. Okay, and then it starts here. Okay. And the tail comes down like this. And then it's got some little feet sticking out here. Okay, so you get the basic sketch, and there'll probably be a couple of these trumpeter vines in here that we'll put in that you want to add. So, you know, go ahead and try to just sketch in a couple of those. And of course there's some weeds and things here for those too. Maybe one up here a little higher. But this is what makes and adds a lot of interest to this painting, is putting all the little fun things in around it, okay? Now the next step is to block in the hummingbird in its entirety in a solid color. And I'm going to basically just use sort of a dark gray. But now I'm going to switch to my sable brush. Now for those of you that have not painted with me before or been watching, you may not be familiar or know what to do with, you know, which brushes to use. Well, you need a number 6 sable brush, flat across the edge. You can buy the man-made sables, which by the way this one is. I've got some regular sables. They're just quite a bit more expensive. But this is a very good brush, especially when they're new. They don't last as long, but they're great for detail. So you're going to need that brush, and you're going to need a couple of small round brushes, like here's a little round one. This is a number 4. Just a little round sable brush for some detail work. And then you're going to need your number 6 bristle brush just to block in everything. All right? So here's what we're going to do. Come down to your palette, and I've still got some mud in there, which is fine. And you'll take some ultramarine blue, a little white, a little brown, a little purple. Just get a nice gray. Let's see what that looks like there. Now down here on your palette it looks one color, but up here it may be another color. All right, I think I'm going to make it just a little darker than that. I'm going to add a little burnt umber and a little bit of purple to it, maybe a little more blue. Okay, that's what we want. There we go. It's sort of a dark gray. It's darker than your background, but not extremely dark. Now all you do to start with is just fill in the basic shape of the hummingbird. Now it's a good idea for you to kind of keep an eye on your photograph. If you're not following my hummingbird and you've got your own, just be sure that you get the shape correct, because if you get the hummingbird shape off, then you can really create some problems. In fact, any bird you do, or any animal, the form has to be pretty much correct, almost exact. Now I want you to notice what I'm doing here. I'm turning my brush sideways to get that feathered edge on the back side. It's easy to do that. Now, come right on into the front one, block it in. But again, as you come from the outer edge here, see how you just turn your brush sideways, and that's how you create the individual feathers on the end. Now because the tail underneath is darker, we can go ahead and add just a little bit of blue and brown to that, and just go ahead and get that darker, because that's the shadowed part. Okay. Actually, the tail is black, I think. So you get that part done, and then you just take your gray and go back and get the top part of the tail done there. Okay. Now, you've blocked in the tail, most of the body. Now you switch to your little number 4 round sable brush. And we're going to mix a dark color. Now this is good for your notes. If you want a real dark color, the best way to get sort of a black is with ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and purple. Now you probably noticed by now I don't use black. I just don't believe in it. I think it's too obvious that it's not a rich color. So I always mix my black. But we need to get the beak in there, and that's pretty easy. Okay, now I've made it fairly long, perhaps longer than it really is, but I'm going to build my flower up around it, then the beak will fit. Okay, now while you've got that dark black in your hand, let's block in the eye. It's just pretty much round, like that. Okay, and then while you still have it, let's go ahead and block in a little more darkness with the tail. Okay, that's the underneath part that's in shadow. Now, as things dry, you move to the next part. Now, the next thing, we have the red underneath the chin. We got to block in the underpainting for that, and that will be using your dioxazine purple and a little red to create a very dark value underneath, like so. So you just block it in very quick and loose. And you dry brush. See how I'm dry brushing? Like so. So you go from the dark, then you dry brush back and let it kind of fade into the rest of the painting. Now, there's some green on the top of the head, there's some white underneath the breast and the stomach, and some other green areas of feathers. So wherever we have some green, now we're going to go over here and take our ultramarine blue with a little touch of green, and we're going to get a real dark sort of a, well, it's kind of an aqua color. And that's what you'll underpaint wherever any of the green areas are going to be. Now, maybe you've noticed what we're doing here by now, but anywhere we have an area that's one color, we always underpaint with a darker form of it. Okay? The best example is what we just did where the greens are. We got sort of an aqua color. Where the reds are going to be, we have a rich dark brownish red underneath. Same thing back here on the tail. There's some green back here and some blue. So we darken that a little bit. And right in through here, just kind of throw a little bit in to make that work. Up here on the wing. A little by little, the hummingbird starts coming alive. Now the secret to this is to get his wings so that they're soft and kind of like they're fluttering. Now this is sort of a still shot of a, I don't know how they did that really because it's real high-speed film, I guess, but we're going to paint this with a little bit more subtlety to the wings, okay? And the way we do that, we build the back one first. We go from the inside wing up because that's in shadow, okay? So you take a little bit of blue and brown, maybe a little white. I'll tell you what, take the blue and the brown, the burnt umber, a little bit of light blue violet, get sort of a nice rich gray. It should be a little bit darker than that, that's not quite dark enough. Okay, there we go. Now this will be a little darker back in here, but just dry brush your way up so that it fades into the dark, into the light. Okay, now see, by putting that little darkness there, that makes this wing automatically stand forward. It's the front wing. But now the fun begins. Dry brushing in each feather. You come down here with this same, and we're using our number 6, this is our number 6 sable, flat. We take a little white now, a little water, and you work it into your brush. You kind of get your brush flattened out. Now, you don't want to paint this too thick or too thin or nothing will happen. But right up on each section where the wing is now, you're going to put some little strokes. And I'll see if I can do this where you can see it. But okay, this gives it a little bit of a feathery look, and then you just go to the next area. Next area. And you dry brush this little texture that looks somewhat like feathers. Now, of course, we have to go in there and do some separating and some things like that, but that gives it the basic beginning of a feather. Okay, so now you've got a little bit of movement, a little direction there. And the next thing we do is take that white, actually it's white with a little bit of mud mixed in it, and on the very top wing there, use the chisel edge of that brush and you put a little thin highlight. And then on the edge of each feather, now come on down here where, okay, now that sort of kind of outlines it. I hate to use that word because some of us are too definite with our outline, but that kind of gives it a little sparkle. Then on the edge of each one of these feathers, there will be a highlight. And you do that by dragging your brush back in. And this is how you actually establish the actual length of each feather. For instance, the feathers on the top are always a little longer. The second feather is the longest one, and then they get shorter, 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 and then you've got it. Okay, just build it back in like so. Now, everything is contingent on the stroke that's underneath it. So be sure that you get lots of feathering, and when you come back in to put these little highlights in there, okay, right on top of each one of these, notice what I'm doing here, just like we did up here. Okay, then you can begin to see the individual feathers. Now I'm going to switch quickly though to my round sable brush because there's some dark areas there that need to be defined, and we'll start with a little blue and brown. And I'm going to start first of all like that, just with a quick stroke, and then I'm going to put another one. Another one, another one, another one. These are the secondary row of feathers. And it really basically gets pretty dark right down here against the body where there's not just a whole lot of detail. Okay. All right, so see, you've created 2 or 3 different things now. There is some highlight in there, and it's sort of a greenish color, so you take white with a little hooker's green. And what I'm going to suggest you do is just kind of smudge in a little bit of this green color right in this area right here, letting the dark come through. That creates that nice fluffy look. And then right on top of the body, right across here, there is also a little bit of a green color. And you dry brush that just like this. Okay. So now what you're doing is you're creating the form of the body now against the contrasting areas of the wing, and that's all you have to do for the moment. We need to go back and finish the other wing now. It's done similar to that one, except there'll be a little bit closer detail. So you take the same brush here, and you're going to dip it in some white paint, not too much, and then you work it into your brush to where it's kind of, I don't know, worked in, just a real dry brush. Starting on the very edges of these, you take a quick swish back. You start on the edge. See, now I got the brush kind of flattened out there a little bit. Okay, that's kind of flat. Okay, we've got a little, not quite enough water. See how you dry brush this light color back? That's how we begin developing the light part of the wing. Really fun, just sort of a dry brush. Now, I'm going to let that sit for a second because I like to come down here and work on the white part of the chest and underneath the tail, because once you get those in, then you can lay the wing where it joins the body back on top of it. So let's go down here to the palette again and a little white. I'm still using some gesso. Feather out this brush, feather out the end of it like so. Keep it flat feather on the end, and underneath you can see the little white feathers around the eye and under the tail. That's what we're getting ready to put in there, but you do it like this very quickly. You just kind of dry brush it, okay? Starting at the top part here. Now this is really a lot of fun because you can create some very neat hair-like or feather-like effects. But you have to have just the right amount of paint and the right amount of water or it won't look right. Once you start running out of water, it gets real scratchy looking. You don't want that. So you always come back at a teeny touch of water, little teeny touch of paint. Make sure your brush is feathered out again. Wherever there's white, you're going to build it pretty bright. Right there now, right here there'll be greens and turquoises and so forth. This part that's left over here will be white, and it's kind of got a blue shadow to it, so you can add a little blue to the white, be okay. And you kind of have to ad lib. Every bird, even though they may be the same species and have the same colorations, they will vary slightly depending on their age, depending on what time of the day it is, how the light's hitting them. There's so many things that change the way a bird looks. So don't be afraid to make some minor changes to fit your particular painting. It just really just doesn't matter. Let's see, we got that nice fluffy feather-like effect now. Now on the tail back here, it's got sort of a turquoise color, and you mix that with ultramarine blue, teeny touch of green, and some white. Ultramarine blue, a little green, and some white. And I'm going to do a similar thing here from a dry brush standpoint. I'm just going to dry brush some little touches of color. Okay, just enough on the back there. Now, after you've done that, we're going to go on up here to the head and the rest of the body to try to get some of the greens and the blues. You're going to stick with your blue, a little light blue violet, touch of white maybe, and just kind of dry brush some little smudges across the top of his head. And every time you get ready to run into another color, you just kind of dry brush it. Now basically, there's a little more green, so I'm going to add some yellow and green here with a little white to get more of a greenish color, sort of a lime green really, around the eye. And this kind of adds a little sparkle to the bird. And right up to the beak, there's some green. Now if you have to, don't hesitate to turn your canvas sideways or upside down if that's what you feel like you have to do to get this, because until you really get the hang of working the details with a brush like this, sometimes it's easier to go in and turn it sideways or something. So I'm just dry brushing. Okay, now around the eye, you're going to rinse your brush. Let's get back to our white here, even though it may not be pure white. And by the way, it's best not to use pure white until you're ready to put a final highlight on. But you just kind of get a little trim around the eye like this, and there's really a white smudge behind it. Underneath it. Don't forget the little highlight in the eye right there. There's just a little highlight right here where the beak and where it runs into the rest of the body. And then I will dry brush on top of the beak while I've got this light color, just a little light, just like that. That gives the beak its three-dimensional form. Now right on the very top head of the head, it's a little darker, so I'm going to go back just to show you that you can, but you can go back and repeat yourself over and over and over. I just want to darken that right there in the front, just a little bit, okay? Now, as soon as you've completed that step, we're going to go back to this wing now, and we're going to try to get all the details in there. Now, underneath both of these, underneath each little section of wing, you're going to have a darker shadow. That's the next step. You take the blue and a little burnt umber, a little water, and underneath each wing, you put just a little bit of a highlight, just a little bit of a highlight, I mean shadow. Okay, that kind of adds some three dimension to the feathers. The same thing here. Also, the darkness is up here around the very front. There's some little dark smudges where little secondary feather pattern is. Now I want you to notice as we paint this painting, everything's done in little short choppy strokes to create the illusion of detail. You don't have to put every single feather in exact order. That's not necessary. Now I will bounce back and forth, trying to, like on the top of each feather, a little highlight, throwing in some lines that create a little bit of a pattern. Right there, just little highlights here and there to create some pattern to this. And you can begin to see the wings starting to develop. They don't need detail, they just need a little bit of softness. Then you come in with some whiter whites. Use a little gesso. And right down here underneath, these wings have a little bit of this part of the feather has a little bit more white, and you can see that really makes the body stand out. Now you can, and I think I'm going to turn this sideways. And on the top of each one of these, you want just a little highlight, but on the very edge, be kind of careful. But you want a real bright touch. on the edge here, that, on the edge of each feather. Okay, now that sort of three-dimensionalizes the wings a little bit. Now, after you've put a little bit of highlight on the wings and things are starting to develop some, then it's time to go back and put the red part on underneath the throat. And you're going to do that with the same brush, and you're going to take a little bit of red. This is Cad Red Light, by the way, and a teeny touch of white, little touch. Again, your brush is spread. Each one of those little strokes will be about what you need for this. You start up here underneath the beak, and you begin developing this little pattern, which is exactly, see, by forming your brush properly, you can create almost identical patterns to whatever it is you're painting at the time, whether it be feathers or hair or fur or whatever. These look kind of like fish scales. And that's exactly what the shape of the brush is doing. And then you just kind of fade it off in there, and there you have the pattern with some of the dark coming through. It looks just exactly like the photograph. Now we've still got some areas that we've got to start improving on. Once you get the bird pretty much blocked in and starting to intermediate some details, then you can start coming back and putting some stronger things in. Like, well, for instance, the tail, right on the edge, has a little bright highlight right there to kind of differentiate it between the rest of the body. On the very edge of it, you may see some highlights. That kind of snaps it out. Underneath it, there's just a few little strokes, just a little highlight to make you realize that it's curved inside, okay? Right here on this part, you pick up some more of this sort of a yellow-green. So we pick up our yellow and our green, or yellow and blue, which will equal about the same thing. A little touch of white to it. And let's get this a little bit more of a sort of a yellowish green, okay? And remember, it's got to be feathery. You want to see the strokes of the feathers. It's a little brighter on his back right there. By the way, if the light comes through there, it can hit right there. But right underneath here, you'll see little bits of the yellow-green. Put a little dab. There's a little bit right here. Right here. Now underneath the bird, right under the breast area, there is a bit more darkness because it's in shadow. So that's the next thing we're going to do now that we've laid the feathers in, is put a little bit of a blue-gray. So take your blue and a little purple and a little bit of light blue-violet, this real light pale blue over here. And we're going to build sort of a grayish color and come right underneath like so. Now that's the color you use for shading anything that's got white involved with it. Especially right here where the body fits in underneath the tail. Okay, now that's the shadowed part that's really important. And then right on top of that, so that it overlaps in some key areas, you want some vivid white. So now you take the bright white, work it into your brush, and now you feather some real bright whites, just a little bit over that, but don't cover up all that blue now because it's still in shadow there. But there are areas where the body becomes more exposed to the sun, right here where it'll pick up some brighter highlights. And you can see that helps add the three-dimensional form to the body. even on top of the head, you can take that white and add just a little yellow to it or something, just to kind of give it a little glow right there. Maybe a little right there. Just don't go overboard with it. A little there. At this point in time, really it's up to you how you finishing, because there's lots of little touches of highlight, there's little areas where you can put shadow, you can put darkness, you can do a lot of things, especially up here on the wing, because it's time now to come in here with these secondary feathers and be a little bit more precise with how they're laid in. Just give them a little more detail, basically. And then that's pretty much all you have to do, except fine-tune any shadowed areas that need it or any highlighted areas that need it. This is a beautiful painting. It's a lot of fun. And I'll tell you what, it's not as hard as it looks, is it? See, you just block him in and get him detailed out. Now, as we start winding down here and running a little out of time, I want to go ahead and quickly show you how to do one of these trumpeter vines with the flower. Of course, we have to put his feet on there. Well, let's do that first. That's real simple. Using the same little round brush, all you're going to do is suggest his feet, because they're so tiny. Most of us don't understand exactly how they work there. So let's just kind of suggest his feet. They usually have three little, whatever you want to call them, claws sticking out there. Just because it looks like he's getting ready to land, they're very tiny. They kind of fade back into the body. And I'll put some shadow here. And then as they begin to fade, there we go, there, now we got it. There should be a dark shadow there. There you've got his feet in. Now if you want to get real technical and be real careful with it, you can put a little highlight on the edge of this front one, because it's probably exposed some. But that's all you have to do. Okay, now with the exception, like I said, of putting some final details, some brighter brights, some whiter whites, some darker darks, and some of the things that you can do on your own, basically that's all there is to painting the hummingbird. Now the flower, on the other hand, we block it in with the same thing we use for the part of the bird there. We use red and purple, and go ahead and block in the whole flower with this darker color, and then we'll highlight it with a brighter color. See, everything is always built first with a dark value, and then you come back with a lighter value on top. Now we both know that we want that flower to extend up over his beak a little bit further, so let's go ahead and build this flower up a little bit further. There we go. Because he's just now getting to it. Now all you do is you take pure red, maybe a touch of yellow, and very quickly dry brush some brighter highlight right on the edge like that. That's how you get that brightness in the flower. And that's really all there is to it. Everything is just so, well, I shouldn't say simple. That always gets me in trouble. But with a little practice, you can make it simple. Now, you have to put the rest of the beak kind of into the flower there, so just like that, so it's over it. Then you've got just a couple little green leafy things at the base. You know, the little seat here. Okay. Then you take your yellow and your green and you very gently build in the stem that holds it, but throw it in very gently, very quick, and very dry brush so that it kind of fades into the rest of the weeds and you don't notice it. And then there's some little, oh, there's a few little leaves that come off here, just a little bit. And that's how you build the hummingbird and the flower, and there's a whole arrangement of flowers that can go in here, and different weeds and different ways that you can finish this thing up to suit your own particular needs or anything that you want to do. I would suggest you go ahead and charcoal in where the flowers are going to go so that you don't make a mistake, because once you get them in, it is kind of hard. A composition would be good to have one overlapping this one, and then I think this one up here would be good because it would be a counterbalance for the rest of it, because it's kind of heavy right in through here, and this would bring it up, and then your eye would flow on in this circle. Plus you can come in and add little things. You know, if you want to add some little touches of color, you can add blues, purples, whites, just little smudges like this. This is the accent that pulls a painting like this together. You can even throw some red in there. Maybe there's some little red flowers that are just little tiny things. This is where you learn to take control of the painting. Repeat your colors, balance out the composition, give it some clarity, and yet give it some softness. This is one of the most exciting paintings I think that you'll ever do. And any bird you do, you can do like this. If it's a cardinal or a blue jay, a hawk, whatever it is, if you want a soft background, just put in a few leaves or a tree stump or whatever, and just have a lot of fun with it. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and continue finishing out the painting now with a few more flowers, a few more weeds, a few more details, not much. Basically, we're done. I'm going to turn it back over to you now. Have a lot of fun finishing it.